So our next session is our labs panel. We've not done a labs panel before. In the past, we've had a drillers panel, which is tomorrow. We have three lab perspectives today. How this is going to work, we have an hour. The three speakers' presentations are all going to go in order first, and then we'll have, that's about 30 minutes of the time, and the rest of the time is for us to ask questions. So in addition to what each of the lab folks talk about, if you have general lab questions that you want to ask today, these are the folks to ask, and this is your chance. So please think about that. And, I know Barb Lukonen is on this. She was here earlier anyway. And the study she did, they found that the first place well owners go is their local health department, and the second place they go to is a lab to ask advice. And I know for me personally, for our program, what I tell labs, and we work with a lot of labs through APHL, if you can't give a well owner answers to the questions they have, I tell a well owner they should go to a different lab. And so it's important that labs become knowledgeable in those things. And these folks are here today to tell us about their experiences. They all work with private well owners. And so get your questions together. And we have three talks. One is from a state lab, one's from a university lab, and one's from a local lab. And so very different sets of folks they work with, and it scales. And so the three talks today, the first is by Lou Barinelli from the New Hampshire Public Health Lab on laboratories, a keystone partner in private well water quality. The second is John Spargo from Penn State Agricultural Analytical Services Lab. He's going to talk about making analytical testing available to private well owners. And our third is Tammy Theisen from the Saginaw County, Michigan Health Department, and she's going to talk about private water well testing at local labs. And so thank you for being here, all of you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today and be part of this panel discussing private well water quality and working with laboratories. My name is Lou Barinelli, and I am the Water Lab Program Manager at the New Hampshire Public Health Laboratories. What I hope to share with you today is what it would be like to work with a state laboratory, what we have to offer to assist you in private well testing, some lessons learned, and hopefully some success stories. Most state environmental laboratories are designated as state principal laboratories. This means we have the capability and capacity to analyze drinking water for all the primary drinking water parameters. These include organics, inorganics, metals, microbiological, and radiological parameters. Our laboratories maintain accreditation either through the NELAC Institute or TNI or the US EPA or some other third-party accrediting body. This ensures that we provide you the highest quality and defensible data possible. And we recommend that when choosing a laboratory to help you in private well testing, that you choose a laboratory that has some kind of accreditation. What we've learned over the years is that it can be very difficult to get well owners to test their well water, and I think there are three main barriers to this testing. We've heard that it's not easy, that people don't know how to do it or what lab to go to. We've heard that they don't understand lab reports when they get them. And we've heard that they don't know what to do if there's actually a problem with their well water. So over the years, we've worked with many partners to break these barriers. And in order to do that, I think we have to do three things. Make it easy for people to test, make it easy for them to understand their results, and make it easy for them to understand what treatment options are available depending on what's in their water. Here in New Hampshire, we've come up with a few of these things, and one of which is to come up with a standard recommendation of what to test for and how often. So we've come up with what we call a standard analysis package. Among other things, it includes arsenic, uranium, and radon. These are naturally occurring contaminants here in New Hampshire that we believe most people should know if they're present in their well water. They can pose a health risk. Now, other states may have different issues and they may come up with different packages. So you need to discuss this with your state laboratory. And we also recommend that these water tests be conducted every 3 to 5 years, or at least annually for bacteria and nitrate testing. We've also tried to make it easy for people to get water test kits. So on our website, we have an easy way for people to order test kits, and we'll mail them out to individuals, and hopefully they mail them back. The other thing we've done is we've worked with communities. It could be the local health officer or town official, and we've worked with them to position water testing kits in their towns, either at the library or the town hall or the police station or someplace where those local individuals can go and pick up a test kit, fill them up, and then mail them back or deliver them to our laboratory. However, even with these steps to facilitate well testing, we know that they do not significantly increase the number of people who test their water. There's still a barrier. What we've learned is the most effective intervention to increase well testing is what I'll call community outreach intervention. And it goes something like this. With the help of a local official, a health officer, select board member, town council, or even a concerned citizen, we organize a community information meeting. At that meeting, we'll cover some of the common naturally occurring contaminants, health effects associated with being exposed to those contaminants, the importance of well testing. We'll go over how to collect a water sample. We'll go over results of some of the common contaminants located in that community, and we'll go over some treatment options. At the end of the meeting, we'll distribute test kits and instruct individuals to collect samples on a specific date and drop them off at a specific location in that community. Again, it could be something like the library or the town hall or the police station. Someone from the town or the lab will be there to receive those samples and then deliver those samples to the laboratory. When we conduct events like this, we get almost 100% participation. And on the next slide, I'll show you an example of the impact that these community outreach events can have. This is some data over a 3-year period in the town of Tuftonboro, New Hampshire. Along the bottom, you can see the number of samples that we receive on average every month from this particular community. And we don't see very many. The spikes you see are the number of samples received by our laboratory following one of these town-wide interventions, meetings. And the first year we conducted one of these outreach meetings, we had over 100 participants return well water samples to our laboratory for testing. The second year, we had over 160 participants return well water testings. And you can see that the third and fourth year, we had a significant number of people test their well water. Our laboratory conducts about 4 or 5 of these outreach town-wide sampling events a year. And we have participation on the order of 30 to 70 people at each one of these events that get their well water tested. Now, along the process, we thought in the beginning that if we got people to test their well water, we would reduce the exposure to some of these contaminants and improve the health of our population. However, we learned that just getting people to test their water was not enough. In order to achieve a positive health outcome, well owners still need to understand their lab results. They need to follow up with treatment if it's necessary, and they need to continue testing after they install treatment. There was a survey done by Dartmouth in 2014 that indicated that 1 out of every 4 people who tested their water did not initially understand results for their lab report. So the other thing that we did here in New Hampshire was we developed this Be Well Informed web tool. This tool provides interpretation of lab results in terms of water quality standards, and it also provides treatment guidance if there are contaminants of concern. The tool allows a person to enter their lab results into a form. It's easy, it's user-friendly, and very easy to enter lab results. It's pretty much set up like a lab report that you would get from our laboratory or any of the private laboratories here in the state. The report, first part, gives a summary of the results, and it uses the stoplight protocol. A green check mark means good, you're good to go. A yellow exclamation point is a warning sign, and a red X is a stop. There's an exceedance in one of these parameters, and some action should be taken. The next part of the report describes the treatment train that would be used to remove the contaminants that are being found in this water. So in this example, there were exceedances for arsenic, lead, and manganese. So the treatment technologies and the treatment train would be to install a whole house treatment system to remove the manganese, then to install a whole house neutralization system to adjust the pH, which would reduce the lead from leaching out of the plumbing. And the third step would be to install a point of use treatment system to remove the arsenic. The report also includes some health-related information, again, interpretation of the results, and some treatment. Now, I'm going to go back one slide. What we've done here in New Hampshire, we're trying to incorporate this Be Well Informed report into our normal lab report. Again, this would reduce the barrier or having people to actually have to fill out this report on their own. We're trying to incorporate this in our LIMS system so that the individual wouldn't have to fill out the form on their own, that we would do that for them and incorporate that into our final lab report. The other thing we developed was this community toolkit, Well Water Community Action Toolkit. So this is a document that will help community leaders develop their own community outreach program, well initiative program, step by step what they need to do to create one of these community outreach events. It comes equipped with some pre-printed flyers that people can customize to their own situation, and it will help them promote and educate the population on private well testing. So finally, I guess I want to stress a few things. State laboratories can offer high quality data and a variety of testing options. State laboratories can work with your community partners and assist in outreach. And state laboratories can offer expertise in results interpretation. Finally, I want to acknowledge some of our partners that we work very closely with our private well initiatives. They include the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, the Dartmouth Toxic Metals Superfund Research Program, and our colleagues at the Association of Public Health Laboratories. Again, I want to thank the organizers for putting together this panel. I look forward to a good discussion, and I hope that I can answer some questions. And thank you very much.
Hello, I'm John Spargo. I'd like to first thank the organizers for inviting me to participate in this panel discussion. Really looking forward to it. As a prelude to that, I prepared this brief video to introduce myself and provide an overview of how Penn State Extension and the Agricultural Analytical Services Laboratory work together to make analytical testing accessible to private well owners. First, a bit more about myself. I joined Penn State as the director of the lab in 2013. My training and expertise is in soil fertility and nutrient management, not drinking water. However, I've learned a lot about water quality over the last 8 years, working with a number of very bright individuals. There's Brian Swisstock and the rest of the water quality extension team, as well as my colleagues here at the lab. So a bit more about the Ag Analytical Services Lab. It's been around since the 1950s and offers a wide range of testing programs. That includes the traditional land-grant university lab services like soil testing, manure and compost testing, things like plant tissue analysis. We also offer water testing for private well owners, but that program is one of the lab's newer services, started in 2007. The lab does hold state accreditation for drinking water testing and has since we started offering the service. So we provide analytical testing and unbiased research-based interpretation and recommendations, again, in support of the land-grant university missions. Our goal for the water testing program here is to promote water testing, water quality awareness, and of course, practical but innovative solutions to any problems that may be identified through that testing. Like all of our services at the lab are offered in support of extension and the outreach mission of the college. So I look at it as the lab serves as a vehicle for extension and outreach. This is particularly well illustrated by the water testing services offered by the lab. We work very closely with the extension water team on all aspects of the program. I'll provide you some examples of that. So first, all of our water testing kits are available through the county extension offices. Our kits include the appropriate sample bottles, insulated coolers, and detailed sampling instructions, detailed written sampling instructions. Now, one of the things that the extension team has done is put together a really nice short video clip providing step-by-step instructions for collecting, preserving, and shipping a water sample. One of the things that we found is that this has significantly improved our clients' ability to collect good samples when they can see it actually illustrated rather than reading it on a sheet of paper. And these videos are posted on our website. The Extension Water Quality team is also instrumental in helping us design the test packages to include a suite of analytes to address either general or very specific concerns based on land use and or symptoms that may be observed. And today we offer a total of 7 packages covering the most basic tests, coliform, E. coli, pH, and TDS, all the way through more extensive packages, including things like corrosivity and first draw lead, as well as trace elements that may be of concern based on land use surrounding the well. I work very closely with our extension colleagues to design reports. They're clear, provide clear and concise information, and provide not just the analytical results, but also the drinking water standards and benchmarks, those levels of concern. Out with every report, we include a sheet including a brief description of each measurement and its potential importance. And one of the most valuable things is contact information for extension personnel, extension associates, and educators who are generally located in close proximity to where the client and the well is located, and are therefore familiar with any local issues, so that they're able to answer any specific questions or address any concerns. We also, when we send these reports out, we include a link to relevant resources right there in the body of the email. And that includes both the traditional extension fact sheets. Extension's really good at producing those, as well as more recently including a video. For example, this is one that Brian Swistock put together recently. It's a 9-minute video which explains options for solving bacteria problems. What we found is almost 50% of the well water samples that we test have failed the drinking water standard for total coliform. So obviously this is a really common question. And it's basically the same concept as a fact sheet, but tends to be much more accessible and easier for some of our clients to understand or comprehend. Again, when we see someone actually explaining something rather than just reading it on a piece of paper. And finally, one of the things that Extension is particularly effective at is evaluation. Water team surveys all of our clients on an annual basis to evaluate not just the quality of the program, but its impact, and identify things not only that we're doing well, but the things that we can do better. So I'll share a few of those findings from the most recent survey and discuss the results. So first question we look at is, how well were you able to understand the report you received? And you can see we're doing pretty well most recently. That hasn't always been the case. This is something that we've seen improve over time as we've revised and updated our reports based on feedback that we've gotten from clients and of course our extension colleagues, as well as the improvements and the resources that we provide to our clients, from again the fact sheets and more recently those videos. Next question we can look at is, when you received your report, did you contact Extension to ask any questions? What we found is that more recently, when we've started to include links to these videos with the reports, especially those addressing coliform problems, Extension's seen a very significant decrease in the number of calls and questions that they're receiving about bacteria problems. Thus, this approach has significantly improved the efficiency of Extension efforts, and that's something that's really important, particularly as we see over time, fewer and fewer resources. Extension is asked to do more and more with less and less. We are few and they are many. So this has been a real improvement. And finally, how much did you learn about your drinking water? And this is something that we've seen improve over time, and really rewarding. The program is certainly effective. Getting the information out in a form that folks understand and is useful to them. Clearly the program's working well in doing that. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. It's just a brief summary of the Penn State Extension. Well, Penn State Extension and the Ag Analytical Services Lab work together to serve private well owners. If you're interested in learning more, here are the links to the Extension water quality resources, as well as the Ag Analytical Services Lab website. I've also provided my email address. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions that we don't get to address during the panel discussion. I'd like to thank you for your attention, and look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Tammy Tyson, and I'm with the Saginaw County Health Department. Welcome to the private well water testing. I'm the laboratory director, and I've been with the company for 36 years. Saginaw is that little red dot in the map of Michigan, who we call the Mitten State. Saginaw's population is about 192,000. We have 800 square feet, and we are the 10th most populated county in the state of Michigan. Saginaw Health Department has a small public health laboratory, and we are certified by the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, and by CLIA, which allows us to do human specimen testing for diagnostics. and I'm a very proud member of APHL. What are some of the beliefs and the fears of people getting their water tested? Well, we've heard things as, there's no reason to test my water. There's nothing wrong with my water. My water tastes great and it's crystal clear, and I've been drinking this water for 40 years and I'm not sick. But yet, if they have company, their company can get sick. They also have a misbelief about the authority that the health department has. They think we will condemn their well if we find something wrong with it, or we will make them drill a new one. See, we have to ensure folks that we're trying to keep them healthy, and if their well is contaminated, there are ways to disinfect that. Once we have convinced them to test their water, they're clueless. They don't know where to start or what to test for. Testing choices can be very confusing. Each lab has a different name, especially if there's panels. So you want to ask for the test by name. In Saginaw Lab, we offer coliform, nitrates, and nitrites are the ones that we suggest they at least start out with. Coliform, so everybody's on the same page, is a group of bacteria found in plant material, water, and soil. Coliforms are also present in the digestive tracts and the feces of humans and animals. Most of the time, these bacteria are not harmful. If coliform is present, then we go ahead and we test for E. coli, which is found in the feces, and it can be harmful. Nitrates and nitrites, the major source of contamination, comes from fertilizers, animal waste, and human sewage. Elevated levels of nitrate in drinking water can cause methemoglobinemia, also known as blue baby syndrome, in both pregnant women and bottle-fed infants under the age of 6 months. Arsenic is also suggested to be tested in many counties of many counties of Michigan. We do not test it in Saginaw, but arsenic exposure can lead to many cancers, can also contribute to cardiovascular, respiratory, reduced intelligence in children, and some skin problems such as lesions. Our laboratory also offers fluoride, chloride, sulfate, sodium, hardness, and iron. Once they figure out what to test for, we try to help them. Where do they go for testing? Of course, if they ask us, we're going to tell them to come in and see us. But we do suggest to select an accredited laboratory. When a lab acquires accreditation or certification in some places, this indicates that their results are of quality. They are following regulations, running quality control, and performing quality assurance activities to produce high quality and reliable results. So here's a quiz. How many times did I say the word quality? For those who are counting, 4. My professor in college would deduct points because I used that word too many times in one sentence. But it is very important to have quality results. The next thing we have to look for is proper collection technique. How do I collect the sample? They don't know. It's vital that we give them good instructions and that they follow those instructions. After all, the results are only as good as what the sample is. I would like to note here that if the well has been chlorinated, such as brand new wells, allow that time for disinfection and then give it enough time to flush the chlorine out. We want it to get back to its natural environment. In our laboratory, we test for inhibitory substances, and if we discover that, meaning chlorine, or bromide, then we will reject the sample. The next factor we need to look at are transportation issues. This may be a factor in selecting which certified or accredited laboratory you use. There's this thing called time and temperature sensitive. You see, nitrates have a 48-hour holding time. 48-hour holding time doesn't mean you have 48 hours to get it to the laboratory. That means it starts from the time you collect, and it has to be tested by 48 hours. If that result comes off at 49 or 50 hours, we have to invalidate it. The sample also has to be kept cold. So when you're using either UPS or the United States Postal Service, if you're shipping it, you have to pay for those packs too. If you use UPS, you choose which one you want to use, a courier service, or if there's something else available in your area, you guys know which one works best. In our area, UPS seems to have a better track. So we do not have a courier service available, but this is one area that we go above and beyond the call of duty. I have an employee who I'd like to give a shout out to. I'd like to thank Margaret Drayton. Margaret lives a few counties away, and she actually meets neighboring local public health agencies to give them sample bottles. This saves them time and money. She also has folks drop samples off at her house early in the morning and brings them into the laboratory. So again, thank you, Margaret Drayton. Some barriers and common problems we see are the homeowners are not following or reading their directions. This includes not cleaning their sampling point, not using aseptic technique when collecting the sample, and not filling out the paperwork properly. Submitting the samples during off hours is also an issue. We are a small local lab, and we will accept samples on Monday through Wednesday from 8 to 4. Many people try to bring them in Thursday or Friday. We're not here on the weekend, so we can't do the testing. The transportation and cold temperature issues that I talked about on the last slide, as you know, that requires a little bit of planning. So when you, things that I suggest if people want their cottage water tested up north, bring it, collect it on Sunday just before you leave, put it in the refrigerator, bring it to us on Monday morning. So there's a little bit of planning involved. Sampling too early after chlorination, as I discussed, we will reject that sample. And I'd like to let everybody know, no matter what lab you use, if that sample is rejected, there should be an explanation of why it was rejected on your report. The main reasons we see are because of the holding times. Either it's been over 48 hours or the sample was not kept cold. Another biggie is that they use the incorrect sample container. So, getting the reports to the correct people sounds easy. Well, it's not. Many times they have no idea where it goes. This is especially true when there's a renter brings in a sample, or if a doctor or dentist has requested that they get their water tested. People just aren't sure where it's going to go. One way that our laboratory ensures that the correct person gets results is we have set up each local environmental health department as a health agency. This means every water that is tested, no matter if it's private, type 1, 2, or 3, that the Environmental Health Division receives a copy, either by fax or by mail. Interpretation, once they get that report, they have no idea what it means. We work with them and we interpret all of the results for them. If they have more questions, then we have our resources, our local resources available. If they're calling, we'll just transfer them down the hall, or we will walk them down the hall. What are the best practices for our laboratory that we've seen? We need to help the homeowner determine what to test for, or refer them to our Environmental Health Division. Again, remember the testing names can be confusing, so this could be a challenge. We need to give good sample collection and submission instructions. Again, test results are only as good as that sample. If we're working with a local health department, set them up as a fax agency. They get the results within an hour from when we result it out. It speeds up things much. And this one can be one of the most difficult, is to have patience and empathy. Many folks are nervous and they just don't understand the process. So what are the advantages of using a local laboratory? Well, we have local resources available. The location and convenience of using a local lab, driving it in, that's nice. Those holding times can be met. The local health department knowledge, especially of the source water or trends happening in our area. As demonstrated by Margaret Drayton, we go above and beyond daily duties. You're keeping business within your community. Our turnaround times tend to be faster, not always, but most of the time. Shipping costs are either greatly reduced or completely eliminated. And the ease of testing water, we just make the process easier. At this point, I would like to thank the organizers of this conference and APHL for the opportunity to share our local lab experience with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's bring everybody up, and if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We're not seeing very many. I do have a couple of my own, and there is one for, I believe this is for Lou. This was back at a minute 2:08. So I don't think you mentioned for these events that you hold, and pretty good success. Are those free of charge for your clients, or is there a fee?
So Steve, the actual event is obviously free. I mean, we usually go with a couple of colleagues or partners here at the state. So usually there's myself from the laboratory, someone from our Drinking Water Groundwater Bureau usually attends, and somebody from our partners at Dartmouth or another agency. So it's usually like three of us that go and do the presentation. The cost for testing, yes, there's a fee for the actual testing. So the state laboratory here in New Hampshire is a fee-for-service laboratory. And, I think, I don't know what other state laboratories are fee-for-service or they can offer the testing for free or not. But the outreach and all that stuff that goes with it is free, but the cost to the individual well owner, that there's a cost for that.
Okay. So one thing I realized during your presentations today is that we picked folks who have a lot of wherewithal to give these talks, right? And so some things came up, like when Tammy just said about using a local lab, how much it's close, it's all those things. It made me think about the fact that like many of the local labs or many of the counties in our state in Illinois actually don't have their own laboratory services. There are a few wealthy counties that do, like in Lake County, which is the north side of Chicago. They've got a full service lab. It's really awesome, the data they collect. But for most of us downstate, those services aren't available. I know like Champaign County where I live, they have to hire a courier to take them to the state lab, and they do that only on Mondays and Wednesdays. So when my son moved out to the country and rented a house that was on an old dug well, I made him test it, and we had to do it on a Monday or Wednesday morning and get it there before noon so the courier could take it over to Springfield. So I don't know how we address those issues, but I wanted to point that out just because I realized, you guys are fortunate to have the resources that some don't have. And that's and I think a lot of times a local lab may not even be available to residents and well owners. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. Please comment. Let me check here. Here's another question and I'm not sure this is but are your testing costs competitive with for-profit accredited labs, or are they less? And you can all join in because I think, I think that's going to vary by how your state laws are set up, at least for the state lab. I know ours is. Go ahead, Lou.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I did.
Okay. So in New Hampshire, the laboratory fees are set in statute. And I believe that, knowing the private lab sector here in New Hampshire, I think our fees are comparable. Some are a little lower than what the private labs will charge, but on average, they're comparable. Getting back to your other comment is, that we don't have the luxury of offering courier service as Tammy said, well owners that want to use our laboratory, either have to drive them to our lab or mail them overnight. And again, we instruct folks, mailing and shipping tips. And again, it's usually overnight, UPS, USPS. The other thing is, we don't have the option of offering, rush service. That's something the private lab sector can do. For the state laboratory, it's pretty much, first come, first serve. Samples get in the queue. Those are some of the things that the state lab differs a little bit from the private lab sector, is that we can't offer some of these specialized turnaround time, or some private labs have courier services. Some private labs have actually people that go out and collect samples for the well owner. So there's a balance between using a state lab and a private lab.
Sure.
in Saginaw County, we have to do budgets on a yearly basis. And of course, we're county. So, the money starts at the Fed and it goes to the state and it goes to the local. And by the time it gets down to us, there's not a lot left. So, unfortunately, as I call them, bean counters, we couldn't survive without them. But they keep saying, you got to raise your prices. You got to raise your prices. I try to be very cognizant of what the prices are, try to keep them competitive. We don't have a lot of private labs close to us, but the ones that I know of, I think and some things were competitive and other things were cheaper, but we have to go by cost because, we're not allowed to make a profit. So.
Right. You and John?
Yeah, at Penn State, we're full cost recovery, but we intentionally work to make sure that our fees are agree with the market. We're not we come in somewhere at the median across the board.
So this isn't totally off topic, I hope, but our university lab has always offered private well testing. It actually offered private well testing for free for inorganics and metals until 2006. And after that, it's been about $60 for something that would cost for a private lab about $200 or so. And we were at part of DNR until 2006. We moved to the university. It's always been believed by everyone, including me, who I've been here a total of 38 years, that was a statute. And just this year, our university did an audit of our lab and tried to find the statute that allowed that, and there is none. Someone just made a decision back in the 60s, and so we've been basically breaking the law since 1960, whatever. And so now our prices are going to go up for the same set of samples to about $280 because of full cost recovery, and it's going to really affect our lab. But anyway, it's interesting how things are based on your state and the laws you have and all those things. So I have a question for Tammy. Do all labs test for inhibitory substances in regard to wait times after chlorination, or is that just something your lab does?
I, like you, Steve, have been here. I started when I was 10, so I've been here 36 years.
Yeah.
And it's something that it's one of those things we've always done it. I don't think it is a requirement, and I don't know if very many other labs that do. I think it stems from, we test a lot of pool and spa waters as well. So we want to make sure that that's also at the right level. And I don't know, Lou, do you guys test for inhibs at all?
If I understand the terminology correctly, so if we're doing a bacteria sample, we will test for residual chlorine.
Yeah.
If that's what, yeah. So if there's still residual chlorine in the sample, we will reject the bacteria sample.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen a lot of interesting things. Like, we had someone send in a sample and they were buying a house and they were worried about it because there was no real well cover. It was an old dug well. And it turned out it rained the night before. And it basically looked like a rainwater sample that our lab does for our atmospheric department. So there's a lot of things that can happen. So another question we have is also for Tammy. And I just took that down. Where'd it go? These are moving now. So, okay, here we go. Why does APHL require retesting a positive coliform test rather than splitting the test at a time of initial sample being provided?
So APHL doesn't require anything. APHL is the Organization for Association of Public Health Laboratories, which we're members of, and we've been working with Steve to present these. As far as retesting, it's as far as our samples in the laboratory goes, if it's a coliform, we take that same sample and continue to confirm or test to see if it's E. coli. Now, I know working with environmental health that if wells are positive, depending on who the inspector is, they'll either say it was probably a sampling issue, let's retest it. And they'll have that homeowner go out and get another sample. If it's type 1, 2, well, there's a lot more issues that go beyond that. So I think that might be what you're saying, but we don't split the sample. It's collected in 100 ml vials. We use that 100 ml. to do our membrane filtration or our coal alert testing. So
Okay.
did I answer the question?
Well, Cindy can answer that in the chat.
Okay.
So what do you all, I mean, I'm assuming none of you have any regulatory authority when you get a sample that's over the health limit. So what's your process? I guess I'm just curious. I'm guessing extension folks follow up in John's case. And what's your process for dealing with the well owner after that? Is it providing materials? Do you ask them to retest?
So I'll take a first stab at that one. For anything, as we start getting results in, anything that we can report immediately, we will. So if somebody failed, coliform, as soon as we can confirm that result, we, email them or give them a phone call just to let them know, boil your water, stop drinking it until we can clean this up. On any of the others, whether it's a health concern or an aesthetic issue, we'll flag all those reports. Actually, down at the footnote, our LIMS is set so that it flags results, that exceed the MCL or secondary standard. And then, actually, in the body of the email, a few years ago, we set it up so that I think I mentioned in the presentation that we'll send a hyperlink to additional resources, whether that's a fact sheet or a quick video, just to really target that information rather than sending them a report and then here's a link to our water extension page and the library of resources. We try and target those.
You're muted, Steve.
I was trying to say, Lou, you're muted, and I was muted.
Am I okay?
You're good now.
Okay, so similarly, for if there's an exceedance in an acute nitrate, E. coli, phone call right away. If it's more chronic type parameter, just go out with the report. And if there's an exceedance, we will provide the necessary fact sheet that discusses the source, the health risk, and the treatment. That's why we're trying to really incorporate this Be Well Informed report output into our regular report right now. So it's very informative. No regulatory authority over private wells here, no enforceable limits, but we do the best we can to educate the well owners, and there's always links to that's the other thing I think I can say. I think I can speak for the other two panelists. When you're dealing with a state laboratory, public local lab, or university lab, I mean, we spend a lot of time talking with individuals who will call, ask for explanation, again, don't understand results, they need guidance. I think that's one of our mission. It's one of our missions to help the general public and promote public health. And so, I don't personally have a problem spending half an hour on the phone with somebody trying to help them understand their water results. And if I can't answer, or somebody here at the state lab can't answer, we have colleagues in our Drinking Water Groundwater Bureau. They're right across the hall from my lab, and we have drinking water engineers, really experts on water treatment. And again, we have no stake in the game, right? So it's truly an unbiased explanation of the results, unbiased explanation of the treatment options. We're not here to sell you a treatment system, so we're going to the information without any bias. So that's basically how we approach the situation.
In Saginaw, we're very similar. The fortunate thing for us is our environmental health is literally just down the hall. So if there is somebody that has coliform or E. coli, just anything, we ask them to follow up. So we're fortunate with that. So it's not on the lab's responsibility. We will make sure we let somebody know. It doesn't just go unnoticed.
Okay. Question from Brian. I know that John has to keep private lab costs in mind when setting testing costs to avoid unfair competition. That's the way we are in Illinois as well. I'm curious if the other two lab operators have any requirements when setting costs other than simple cost recovery. Tammy?
I don't think I have that. I've never been told by anybody about unfair competition. We try to recover our cost and stay in the market. But I will definitely be asking my accountant that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, our fees are set in statute, so the legislature does have some control over how we set our fees, and I think there's a balance here in that the legislature understands that it's important for well owners to get their water tested, and and it's also important to have the private lab business industry to flourish. So there's a balance, and as I said earlier, I think there's for most things we're pretty competitive, but we're probably on the lower end of the price scale. But there's plenty of work to go around, so I think we're okay.
Well, that's one thing we're seeing with more and more media coverage and everything else with private wells, and the drought in California and arsenic and everything else, and PFAS is really raising some of that. And so I'm sure labs are doing more work these days than they every time something like that happens. Okay, so I have a couple questions I thought of beforehand I wanted to ask. And first one's kind of loaded, but I get asked this a lot. What are your thoughts on home test kits? What our lab person, who's retired now, so I can talk about him, always said is for a few things like where you're doing pH or things that you do for a fish tank or a pool, those common tests are probably okay. But for anything else, it's probably not a good idea. And I know we've tested some of those things, especially the colorimetric ones. And, I'm colorblind for one, and it depends on the day, how light it is, and all these issues. And so, a short answer is good. I just wanted to bring it up because it's you guys have to deal with that regularly, I'm sure. And someone telling you that they've got an answer and they probably don't have a clue.
So I knew of a person who worked for a water softener company, and he no longer worked there. So he revealed some secrets, and he said, they told us if we just reverse reagent 1 and reagent 2, it'll give a positive test and we'll sell more systems.
Yeah.
So it might be a good place if somebody's curious, but I wouldn't put a lot of weight into it. If they want to know good quality results and what they're actually drinking, I don't trust them.
Well, and we tell people, even if you use one of those things, if it shows something, you can't really trust it. You need to go to a lab and have it verified and find out what's really going on. Yeah. So, John?
I didn't really have anything to add. That question actually comes up quite frequently with soil fertility testing, and it depends on what you're testing for and how precise you need the numbers. But my general response is no. I mean that those can be great tools, but you should verify the results by sending a sample to the lab.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. All right. Enough said. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So I wanted to bring up, John, you've done customer surveys and have data on, how people thought it was reasonable, or if it was well read, or that it was easy to understand. I was wondering, you mentioned then that having videos really reduced the amount of calls you all get. And do you have any feedback information on your videos, taking it to the next level to understand, are they really getting what they need? Or are they feeling like they get enough that they don't need to ask?
Yeah, this would be a better question to pitch to Brian.
Okay.
As you know, it's really been Brian and his team that have put those together. I think that, you know, with extension in general, we have been pushed to more and more create what Penn State has branded as these Learn Now videos. And, you know, I mean, we're all have become accustomed to having, you know, the world at our fingertips. And it's so much easier to watch a little YouTube video than try and read the tiny little font of a PDF on your phone. It makes things accessible, you know, in a different format. And I think in many ways, and I'm, you know, certainly one, I can consume some pretty quick information through one of those. Brian just weighed in, no formal evaluations on the videos, but we feel really good about them. And, you know, informally, I'll say one of the things that has helped them a lot, you know, we all want to help. We all want to take all of those phone calls and answer every email that we get. But I think, you know, all of us, that's a full day, which means you're not doing anything else, creating fact sheets or writing grants or, you know, all of the other things we're tasked with. So I will say that feedback that I've gotten from Brian, he's being modest, is that the number of phone calls since we started making those available to folks has been drastically reduced.
That says a lot, I think. So we have another question, and we're getting kind of close to our time here. We got a few minutes. So Pam asked, any requirement to report to the health department if hazardous constituents are suspected, like VOCs, pesticides, you know, some of the more high-end things?
None on my end. None. No requirement. No.
Tammy? Nothing there? Okay. Let me look through, because there's been a lot of talk going on. We have some other lab folks clearly in our group today, and if you're watching the chat, it's there's a lot of stuff going on here. I think that's all I have. So I appreciate you guys and your time and preparing videos and all those things. It's always interesting to learn how other folks do those things and the variability we see. And, you know, like I said, it's actually a good time because more people are getting their wells tested. I had talked to someone the other day who said they'd done a survey in their area, and or maybe somebody mentioned this, maybe it was even here at this conference, that they only had 34%, or they had 34% who had never tested. That's a great number if that were really the case, because it's probably closer to 2/3 that have never tested. And so, you know, that's our number one statement to everybody, is you need to test your well regularly. And so it's important, one, that they know who's out there and what labs are available, and how to go about that. So we appreciate your time, and thank you. Interesting conversation.
Thank you, Steve.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Steve. Thanks, everybody, for the questions.
Thanks.
All right, so we're at the end of the day, and I want to thank everybody who's been involved today. I thought the discussion this morning was really cool. We were really, I think Jennifer most of all was a little concerned about how it might go, and I thought it went really well. And so it's something we'll try to do in the future, for sure. And doing this in person next year, it might be interesting to see how that might go. But I'm really glad we did the lab panel today as well. There is a lot of variability, and it's the same issues. In the end, well owners need folks they can trust, and so that's a good thing. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning.